The basement of our Victorian house had always been my sanctuary. Surrounded by half-finished projects and the comforting smell of sawdust, I sat in my worn leather chair, nursing a lukewarm coffee and trying to make sense of the past few months. My name is Evan Mercer, and at 34, I thought I had life figured out. Home inspector by day, husband by night, living in the kind of small Maine town where everyone knows your business before you do. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Wilkes, our 70-year-old neighbor who treated surveillance like a competitive sport. Saw your wife get dropped off by a different man than last week. Hope your insurance is paid up. I stared at the message, my coffee growing colder. Lydia had been on another one of her girls' trips to Portland. Third one this month. Each time she returned distant, distracted, smelling like expensive hotel soap instead of her usual lavender body wash. The front door slammed upstairs, followed by the sharp click of heels on hardwood. I climbed the creaky stairs to find Lydia in our kitchen, still wearing her corporate armor, a tailored black suit that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place, which struck me as odd for someone who'd supposedly spent the weekend hiking with girlfriends. "How was the trip?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She didn't look up from her phone. "Fine. Relaxing." "Which trails did you hit?" Her fingers paused over the screen. "The usual ones. You wouldn't know them." "Try me. I've inspected half the vacation rentals in Cumberland County." Lydia finally looked at me, her green eyes cold and calculating. She'd always been beautiful, but lately that beauty felt weaponized. "We went to different places this time, more private locations." Something in her tone made my chest tighten. "Private how?" She set her phone down with deliberate precision. "Evan, we need to talk." Those 4 words. Every married man knows them. They're never followed by good news. "I'm listening," I said, though part of me wanted to retreat back to my basement sanctuary. Lydia smoothed her skirt and took a breath. "I've been thinking about our marriage, about what I need, what we both need." "Okay." "I need variety, Evan. Brady gives me what you can't." The words hit like a physical blow. Brady Ellison, her coworker from the corporate office where she worked in human resources. The gym rat who drove a BMW and wore cologne that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. I felt my world tilt, but somehow my voice remained steady. "How generous of him. Should we send a thank you basket?" Lydia's perfectly plucked eyebrows furrowed. She'd expected tears, maybe anger, certainly not sarcasm. "This isn't a joke." "No, it's not." I pushed off from the doorframe. "It's just interesting timing, right after another weekend trip." "Evan, how long?" She lifted her chin defiantly. 3 months. 3 months. While I'd been working overtime to pay for her spa weekends and shopping trips, she'd been sampling variety with Brady Ellison. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I see." I nodded slowly. "Well, I appreciate your honesty. Finally." "That's it? That's all you're going to say?" I studied her face, looking for any trace of remorse or regret. Found none. "What would you like me to say? That I'm shocked? I'm not. That I'm heartbroken? I am. But mostly I'm curious." "About what?" "About whether Brady's wife knows about his generous nature." The color drained from Lydia's face. "Janelle doesn't... That's not your concern." "Isn't it? I mean, if we're talking about variety and honesty, shouldn't everyone get to enjoy the same transparency?" Lydia grabbed her phone and headed toward the stairs. "I'm going to take a shower. We'll figure out the details later." "Sure thing. Take your time." She paused at the bottom of the staircase. "You're taking this surprisingly well." "Am I? Or am I just getting started?" After she disappeared upstairs, I stood in the kitchen listening to the old house settle around me. The pipes groaned as the shower started, and I realized Lydia had left her phone on the counter. Her work phone. The one she'd been guarding like state secrets for months. I picked it up, surprised to find it unlocked. Lydia had always been careless with technology, assuming her charm was protection enough. The text messages opened like a book of evidence. Months of conversations with Brady, planning their meetings, sharing details that made my stomach turn. Not explicit photos or videos, but words. Dirty, intimate words that should have been reserved for her husband. One message thread caught my attention. Brady. "Can't wait for this weekend. Booked the usual place." Lydia. "Perfect. Told Evan it's another girl's trip. He never questions anything." Brady. "Poor guy. Probably has no idea what he's missing." Lydia. "He's too boring to figure it out. No imagination." I scrolled further, finding photos of hotel rooms, restaurant receipts, even a selfie of them together at some upscale bar in Portland. But the most interesting discovery was Brady's contact information, including his home address and, more importantly, his wife's social media profiles. Janelle Ellison. 31 years old, worked as a freelance graphic designer, had been married to Brady for 6 years. Her Instagram showed a woman who smiled for the camera but whose eyes held a certain sadness. Recent posts were mostly of her cat, her artwork, and solo trips to coffee shops. Very few photos with her husband. I screenshot several of the most damning conversations, then carefully placed Lydia's phone back where she'd left it. The shower was still running upstairs, giving me time to think. Brady Ellison thought he was clever, seducing another man's wife while keeping his own in the dark. Lydia thought she was entitled to variety without consequences. Both of them had made the same critical error. They'd underestimated me. I pulled out my own phone and found Janelle's Instagram profile. She'd posted a story just 2 hours ago from a coffee shop downtown. The timestamp showed she was probably still there. Without overthinking it, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. If Lydia wanted variety, she was about to get more than she bargained for. The coffee shop was a small place called Grind, tucked between a used bookstore and a vintage clothing boutique. Through the window, I spotted Janelle immediately. She sat alone at a corner table, laptop open, sketching something on a tablet. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore a simple green sweater that brought out her eyes. I ordered a black coffee and approached her table. "Excuse me, are you Janelle?" She looked up, startled. "Yes?" "I'm Evan Mercer. I think we need to talk." Janelle's face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, then something like resignation. She gestured to the empty chair across from her. "You're Lydia's husband." Guilty as charged. I sat down, studying her face. Up close, she was prettier than her photos suggested, but there was a weariness around her eyes that spoke of recent sleepless nights. "I'm guessing you know why I'm here." "I've suspected something for weeks." She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. "Brady's been working late a lot. Weekend conferences that never seem to have any follow-up. And he's been different." "Different how?" "Guilty, defensive. He bought me flowers last week for no reason, which Brady never does unless he's done something wrong." She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "How long have you known?" "About an hour. Lydia decided to enlighten me this afternoon." Janelle's eyebrows rose. "She told you?" "Apparently she needs variety, and Brady gives her what I can't." I took a sip of my coffee, which tasted like burnt regret. She seemed surprised when I didn't fall apart on the spot. "What did you do?" I said how generous of him, and asked if we should send a thank you basket. For the first time since I'd sat down, Janelle smiled. It transformed her entire face. "I like your style." "Thanks. I'm still working on my response strategy." "Any ideas?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken from Lydia's messages. Janelle read through them, her expression growing harder with each swipe. "Poor guy probably has no idea what he's missing," she read aloud. "Too boring to figure it out. No imagination." She looked up at me. "They really think we're idiots, don't they?" "Apparently. The question is, what do we do about it?" Janelle was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the late afternoon traffic. "I've been thinking about leaving Brady for months. Not because I suspected cheating, but because I realized I didn't like who I was becoming around him. Small, invisible, like I was just part of the furniture. I know the feeling. But leaving feels like letting them win, like they get to ride off into the sunset while we pick up the pieces." I leaned forward. "What if we didn't let them win?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, they want variety. Let's give them variety. The kind they'll never forget." Janelle's eyes lit up with interest. "I'm listening." Over the next hour, we talked. Really talked, in a way I hadn't with another person in months. Janelle was sharp, funny, and had a strategic mind that impressed me. She'd been thinking about this situation longer than I had, and her ideas were both creative and legally sound. "The office gala is next Friday," she said. "Brady's been talking about it for weeks. It's their big social event of the year. Everyone from the company will be there. Including Lydia. Including Lydia. And everyone loves a good love story." I grinned. "Are you suggesting we crash their party?" "I'm suggesting we attend their party. Together. As each other's dates." The idea was brilliant in its simplicity. Brady and Lydia thought they were being clever, sneaking around behind our backs. But what would happen when their betrayed spouses showed up together, happy and attractive and completely unbothered by their affair? "There's one problem," I said. "I wasn't invited." "You will be. I'll make sure of it." Janelle pulled out her own phone. "I know people at the company. Brady's not the only one with connections." We exchanged numbers and made plans to meet again in a couple of days. As I walked back to my truck, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: anticipation. For the first time since Lydia's confession, I was looking forward to something. My phone buzzed with a text from Doug, my oldest friend and former police partner from my paramedic days. "Beer tonight? You sound like you need it." I hadn't realized I sounded like anything, but Doug had always been perceptive. "Absolutely. Usual place?" "See you at 8. The usual place was Murphy's, a dive bar that served honest drinks to honest people. Doug was already there when I arrived, occupying our regular booth in the back corner. At 42, he was built like a linebacker who'd discovered pizza, but his eyes were sharp and missed nothing. "You look like someone who just found out his lottery ticket was a fake," he said as I slid into the booth. "Close. I found out my wife's been sampling the variety pack with her coworker." Doug's expression darkened. "That corporate pretty boy with the fancy car?" "Brady Ellison, yeah." "Son of a—" Doug caught himself and took a long pull from his beer. "What are you going to do?" I told him about my conversation with Lydia, my meeting with Janelle, and our preliminary plans for the office gala. Doug listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of approval. "I like this Janelle already," he said when I finished, "and I like your plan, but you're thinking too small." "How so?" "You're planning one night of embarrassment. These people humiliated you for months. They deserve more than one awkward evening." Doug had a point. Brady and Lydia had been living their secret life for 3 months, laughing at their boring spouses while enjoying their variety. One night of public discomfort hardly seemed like justice. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we make this interesting. You said Brady lives in one of those fancy townhouses on Elm Street." "According to Lydia's phone, yeah." "And he's got that shiny BMW he's so proud of." "Your point?" Doug grinned. "My point is that people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, and people who drive fancy cars shouldn't park them in unsecured locations. Doug, I'm not looking to commit any felonies." "Who said anything about felonies? I'm talking about creative expression, art projects, community service." I knew that look in Doug's eyes. It was the same expression he'd worn in high school when he convinced me to put plastic wrap over the principal's toilet. Mischievous, but not malicious. "What kind of art projects?" "The kind that send a message. The kind that let Brady know his secret life isn't so secret anymore." We spent the next 2 hours planning. Doug's background in law enforcement meant he knew exactly where the legal lines were drawn, and more importantly, how to dance right up to those lines without crossing them. By the time we left Murphy's, we had a comprehensive strategy that would unfold over the next week, culminating in the office gala. When I got home, the house was dark, except for the glow from Lydia's laptop in the living room. She was curled up on the couch, still in her work clothes, typing away at something. "Working late?" I asked. She looked up, and for a moment, I saw something like guilt flash across her face. "Just catching up on some reports." "Of course." I headed toward the stairs. "I'm going to bed. Long day tomorrow." "Evan?" I paused. "Yeah? Are we going to be okay? I mean, can we work through this?" The question caught me off guard. After confessing to a 3-month affair, after telling me she needed variety I couldn't provide, she was asking if we could work through it. "I don't know, Lydia. Can we?" "I hope so. I really do." I studied her face in the laptop's glow. She looked young and vulnerable, almost like the woman I'd married 5 years ago. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old affection. Then I remembered Brady's text. Poor guy probably has no idea what he's missing. "We'll see," I said, and headed upstairs. Tuesday morning brought the kind of crisp October air that made Maine famous. I was inspecting a Victorian house similar to my own when my phone rang. Janelle's name appeared on the screen. "Good news," she said without preamble. "You're officially invited to the gala. I told them you were my +1. "Your +1? My date. My devastatingly handsome, charming, intelligent date who I've been secretly seeing." I nearly dropped my moisture meter. "Janelle, we just met yesterday." "I know. But Tessa Martinez from HR doesn't know that. She's Lydia's best friend at work and the biggest gossip in the company. I may have mentioned to her that I've been seeing someone new, someone who makes me laugh and treats me like I matter." "And she bought it?" "Honey, I've been married to Brady for 6 years. Trust me, I know how to sell a story." The plan was becoming more elaborate by the hour, but I had to admit it was brilliant. And Brady and Lydia thought they were the only ones playing games. They had no idea their betrayed spouses were about to turn the tables. "What's our cover story?" "We met at a coffee shop. Love at first sight. You're everything my husband isn't. Attentive, funny, genuine. I'm everything your wife isn't. Loyal, appreciative, present. That last part might actually be true. The whole thing might be true, given time. There was something in her voice that made me pause. Janelle. Relax, Evan. I'm not proposing marriage. I'm proposing revenge. The fact that I genuinely like you is just a bonus. After we hung up, I finished my inspection and drove to Doug's house. He lived in a small ranch-style home that he'd inherited from his mother, complete with a garage full of tools and a basement workshop that would make any handyman jealous. Ready for some artistic expression? He asked, leading me to his garage. On the workbench, he'd laid out supplies, washable paint, brushes, stencils, and what looked like lingerie. Please tell me that's not your underwear, I said. Very funny. I stopped by Victoria's Secret this morning. Told the salesgirl I needed something in my wife's size for a romantic surprise. You don't have a wife. The salesgirl doesn't know that. Doug's plan was elegantly simple. We would visit Brady's townhouse while he was at work and leave behind evidence of his affair in places where he'd find it, but no one else would. Nothing illegal, nothing permanent, just enough to let him know his secret was out. The goal is psychological pressure, Doug explained. We want him paranoid, looking over his shoulder, wondering who knows and what they're planning. And if he calls the police? And tells them what? That someone left women's underwear in his house? That his car got decorated with washable paint? He'd have to explain why those things bother him, which means admitting to the affair. We drove to Elm Street in Doug's pickup truck, parking 2 blocks away from Brady's address. The townhouse was exactly what I'd expected. Modern, expensive, and soulless. The kind of place that looked good in magazines, but felt cold in person. Brady's BMW was gone, which meant he was probably at work, possibly planning his next variety session with my wife. The thought made my jaw clench, but I pushed the anger aside. Anger was counterproductive. Strategy was better. Doug's lockpicking skills were rusty but functional. Within 5 minutes, we were inside Brady's pristine living space. Everything was white or chrome or glass, like a showroom display. This place has all the warmth of a morgue, Doug muttered. We worked quickly and systematically. I planted Lydia's spare bra, one I'd retrieved from her drawer that morning, behind the couch cushions where Brady would eventually find it. Doug left a pair of lacy underwear in Brady's gym bag, along with a note that read, "Thanks for the workout." L. The piece de resistance was Doug's car decoration. Using washable paint and stencils, he wrote Variety King on Brady's rear windshield in elegant script. Artistic enough to avoid vandalism charges, visible enough to embarrass Brady when he drove home. Think he'll get the message? Doug asked as we packed up our supplies. If he doesn't, we'll send a clearer one. That evening, I was back in my basement sanctuary when Lydia came home from work. She seemed agitated, pacing around the kitchen and checking her phone constantly. Everything okay? I called up the stairs. Fine, just work stress. But it wasn't fine. Through the baby monitor I'd strategically placed in the kitchen months ago, originally to listen for Lydia's late-night phone calls with her mother, I heard her dial Brady's number. Did you find it? She whispered. Find what? Brady's voice was tight with anxiety. The note. The underwear. Someone was in my house, Lydia. That's impossible. Who would? I don't know, but they knew about us. They left your bra behind my couch. My bra? Which bra? The black one with the lace. And they painted something on my car? What did they paint? Variety King, in big fancy letters. There was a long silence. Then Lydia spoke, her voice barely audible through the monitor. Do you think Evan knows? How could he know? You said he never pays attention to anything. He doesn't. But someone knows. What do we do? We're careful. We lay low for a while, and we figure out who's playing games with us. I smiled in the darkness of my basement. The psychological pressure was already working. Brady was paranoid, Lydia was worried, and they were both looking over their shoulders. But this was just the opening act. The real show would begin at the office gala. Friday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth and clear skies. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the tie I'd bought specifically for this occasion. The charcoal gray suit was the nicest thing I owned, purchased years ago for our wedding and rarely worn since. Lydia was getting ready in the guest bathroom, having claimed she needed more space for her gala look. Through the thin walls, I could hear the whir of her hairdryer and the clink of makeup containers. She'd been nervous all week, jumping at every phone call and checking the locks twice before bed. Evan, she called out, are you almost ready? Just about, I replied, checking my watch. 7:30. The gala started at 8, but I had no intention of arriving with my wife. I'll meet you there, I called out. I have to stop by Doug's first. What? Why? He's having car trouble. I said I'd take a look. It was a lie, but Lydia was too distracted to question it. She appeared in the bedroom doorway, and I had to admit she looked stunning. The emerald green dress hugged her curves perfectly, and her auburn hair was swept up in an elegant chignon. For a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen for her in the first place. You look beautiful, I said, and meant it. Thank you. She seemed surprised by the compliment. Are you sure you can't ride with me? I'm sure. Doug really needs the help. She nodded, gathered her purse and wrap, and headed downstairs. Tantale. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway before making my own exit. Janelle lived in a small apartment complex on the other side of town. When she opened her door, I felt my breath catch. She wore a midnight blue dress that brought out her eyes, and her dark hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. She was beautiful, but more than that, she looked happy. Genuinely happy, in a way I hadn't seen in our previous meetings. You clean up nice, she said, giving me an appreciative once-over. You're stunning, I replied. Brady's an idiot. Yes, he is. But that's his loss and your gain. At least for tonight. The drive to the hotel where the gala was being held gave us time to go over our strategy one more time. We would arrive fashionably late, make a grand entrance, and spend the evening being the perfect couple, attentive to each other, obviously happy, completely unbothered by our respective spouses' affair. Remember, Janelle said as we pulled into the hotel parking lot. We're madly in love. This is our first public appearance as a couple, and we can't keep our hands off each other. I think I can manage that, I said, and realized I wasn't entirely acting. The hotel ballroom was decorated in the company's corporate colors, burgundy and gold, with round tables surrounding a dance floor and a small stage where a jazz quartet played soft background music. The room was already crowded with Lydia's coworkers and their spouses, all dressed in their finest attire. I spotted Lydia immediately. She was standing near the bar with Brady and a small group of people I didn't recognize. Brady looked uncomfortable, constantly scanning the room as if expecting trouble, which I supposed he was. There they are, Janelle murmured. I see them. Ready to make an entrance? I was born ready. We walked into the ballroom hand in hand, and I felt the exact moment the room noticed us. Conversations paused, heads turned, and I heard someone whisper, Is that Janelle Ellison? Tessa Martinez, Lydia's gossip-loving friend, was the first to approach us. She was a petite woman with sharp eyes and an expression of barely contained excitement. Janelle, you look amazing, and you must be the mysterious new man I've been hearing about. Tessa, this is Evan, Janelle said, squeezing my hand. Evan, this is Tessa from HR. Pleasure to meet you, I said, shaking Tessa's hand. Likewise. Janelle's been very secretive about you. Where did you two meet? At a coffee shop, Janelle replied. I was having the worst day, and Evan just made everything better. How romantic. And what do you do, Evan? I'm a home inspector. Nothing glamorous, but I enjoy it. How refreshing. Someone with a real job. I glanced toward the bar and saw that our conversation had attracted attention. Brady was staring at us with undisguised shock, while Lydia's face had gone pale. Several other people were watching as well, clearly intrigued by this unexpected development. Would you like to dance? I asked Janelle. I'd love to. The dance floor was relatively empty, which meant our every move would be visible to the entire room. Janelle moved into my arms with natural grace, and we began to sway to the music. How are we doing? She whispered. I think we've got their attention. Good. Brady looks like he's about to have a stroke. I spun Janelle gently, and she laughed, a genuine, delighted sound that made several people smile. When she came back into my arms, she was closer than before, her hand resting on my chest. You're a good dancer, she said. You sound surprised. Brady has 2 left feet and no rhythm. I'd forgotten how nice it is to dance with someone who actually knows how. The song ended, but we stayed on the dance floor for the next one, and the next. Other couples joined us, but we remained the center of attention. I could feel eyes on us from across the room, and I knew our plan was working. During a brief break between songs, Tessa approached us again, this time with a small group of women I recognized as Lydia's coworkers. You two are adorable, one of them gushed. How long have you been together? Not long, I replied. But sometimes you just know, you know? That's so sweet. Janelle, you look happier than I've seen you in years. I feel happier, Janelle said, looking up at me with convincing adoration. Evan makes me remember who I used to be. And what about Brady? Another woman asked. How's he taking the separation? Brady's adjusting, Janelle said diplomatically. We want different things from life. It's better this way. I noticed that Lydia had moved closer to our group, obviously trying to overhear our conversation. Her face was a mask of controlled emotion, but I could see the tension in her shoulders and the way she gripped her wine glass. "Excuse me," she said, stepping into our circle. "I don't think we've been introduced. I'm Lydia Mercer." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the group knew about Brady and Lydia's affair. Office gossip traveled fast, and they were waiting to see how this confrontation would play out. "Hello, Lydia," I said calmly. "You look lovely tonight." "Thank you." Her eyes darted between Janelle and me. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Janelle invited me. I hope that's all right." "Of course. It's just surprising." "Life's full of surprises," Janelle said with a sweet smile. "Some of them are wonderful." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lydia's coworkers were watching the exchange with fascination, clearly sensing the undercurrents, but not sure what to make of them. "Would you excuse us for a moment?" Lydia said to the group. "I'd like to speak with my husband privately." "Actually," I said, "I'd prefer to stay here with Janelle. We were having such a nice time." "Evan." Lydia's voice carried a warning. "It's all right," Janelle said, squeezing my hand. "I'll be right here when you get back." Lydia led me to a quiet corner of the ballroom, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. When we were out of earshot of the others, she turned to face me, her green eyes blazing. "What are you doing?" "I'm attending a party with a beautiful woman. What are you doing?" "Don't play games with me, Evan. Why are you here with her?" "Her name is Janelle, and I'm here with her because she asked me to come." "This is ridiculous. She's married." "Is she?" "Because from what I understand, she and Brady are separated." "They're not?" Lydia caught herself. "That's not the point." "What is the point, Lydia?" "The point is that you're making a scene. People are staring." "Are they? I hadn't noticed. I've been too busy enjoying myself." "This isn't like you." "Maybe you don't know me as well as you thought." Before Lydia could respond, the bandleader stepped up to the microphone on the small stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our annual tradition, the selection of this year's cutest couple." A cheer went up from the crowd, and I saw several couples move closer to the dance floor. This was apparently a popular event. "Each table will nominate one couple, and then we'll have our final vote," the bandleader continued. "Nominated couples, please step onto the dance floor." I felt a hand on my arm and turned to see Janelle beside me, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Our table nominated us," she said loudly enough for Lydia to hear. "Did they now?" I grinned. "Well, we can't disappoint them." I offered Janelle my arm, and we walked onto the dance floor together. 5 other couples joined us, including one pair who were clearly the favorites, a young couple who couldn't stop giggling and whispering to each other. "This is our moment," Janelle whispered as the music started. "Let's make it count." We danced like we'd been partners for years. Every step was in sync, every turn was graceful, and every moment looked effortless. When I dipped Janelle at the end of the song, she laughed with pure joy, and I found myself laughing with her. The applause was thunderous. "All right, folks," the band leader announced. "Time to vote. Cheer for your favorite couple." The young couple got enthusiastic applause. Another pair, clearly company executives, received polite clapping. When the band leader pointed to Janelle and me, the response was overwhelming. "We have our winners," he declared. "The cutest couple of the evening." Someone handed us a small trophy, a ridiculous thing shaped like 2 dancing figures, and the photographer snapped pictures while the crowd cheered. I looked out over the audience and saw a mixture of expressions. Some people were genuinely happy for us. Others looked confused or intrigued. Brady looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Lydia looked like she wanted to disappear entirely. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "This is unexpected, but wonderful. Janelle brings out the best in me." "And Evan makes me feel like the luckiest woman in the room," Janelle added. More applause, more photos, and then we were finally able to leave the spotlight. As we walked back to our table, I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't experienced in months. "How was that for variety?" Janelle whispered. "Perfect," I replied. "Absolutely perfect." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, conversations, and carefully orchestrated romance. Janelle and I played our parts flawlessly, appearing so happy and comfortable together that even I almost believed we were really a couple. Around 10:30, I noticed Lydia gathering her purse and wrap. She looked tired and defeated. Nothing like the confident woman who had arrived earlier. Brady was nowhere to be seen. "I think our work here is done," I told Janelle. "Agreed. This has been the most fun I've had in years." We made our goodbyes and headed for the parking lot. As we reached my truck, Janelle turned to face me. "Thank you," she said. "For tonight, for everything. I know this started as revenge, but it became something more." For me too. She stood on her toes and kissed my cheek. Drive safe, Evan, and call me tomorrow. I will. As I drove home through the quiet streets, I reflected on the evening's events. The plan had worked perfectly. Lydia and Brady's affair was now public knowledge, at least among their coworkers. Their reputations were damaged, their secret was out, and their victims had emerged victorious. But more than that, I had discovered something unexpected. In seeking revenge against my unfaithful wife, I had found a connection with someone who understood my situation. Janelle was smart, funny, beautiful, and genuine. Everything Lydia had once been but had forgotten how to be. And when I got home, the house was dark. Lydia's car was in the driveway, but she had apparently gone straight to bed. I was grateful for the solitude. I needed time to process the evening and plan my next move, because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Saturday morning brought gray skies and the kind of drizzle that made everything look dreary. I was in my basement workshop, ostensibly organizing tools, but really just trying to stay out of Lydia's way, when my phone rang. "Well, that was interesting," Doug said without preamble. "You heard about last night?" "Heard about it? Brother, it's all over social media. Tessa, what's her name, posted about 20 photos of you and Janelle dancing, complete with commentary about true love and second chances." I pulled up Instagram on my phone and found Tessa's account. Sure enough, there were multiple posts from the gala, with Janelle and me featured prominently. The comments were a mix of congratulations and speculation. Janelle looks so happy. Finally, someone who appreciates her. They're perfect together. What about Brady? Brady who? This is better than a soap opera? The internet loves a good love story, Doug continued, especially when it involves someone getting their comeuppance. Speaking of comeuppance, how's Brady handling his new fame? Funny you should ask. I drove by his place this morning. The Variety King paint is gone, but he's got his car parked in the garage now instead of the driveway, and there's a security system sign in his front yard that wasn't there before. Paranoid much? Can you blame him? The man's living in fear, wondering when the other shoe will drop. Maybe it's time to drop it, Doug chuckled. What did you have in mind? Before I could answer, I heard footsteps on the basement stairs. Lydia appeared, still in her pajamas and robe, looking like she hadn't slept well. I have to go, I told Doug. We'll talk later. Everything all right? Lydia asked as I hung up. Fine. Just making plans for the weekend. With Doug? Among others. She sat down on the old couch I kept in the corner, pulling her robe tighter around herself. We need to talk about last night. What about it? About your little performance with Janelle Ellison. I set down the wrench I'd been holding and turned to face her. Performance? Don't pretend it was real, Evan. You barely know the woman. I know her better than you think. How is that possible? When did you even meet her? Does it matter? Lydia's eyes narrowed. It matters because you're my husband, and you embarrassed me in front of my coworkers. I embarrassed you. That's rich. Yes, you embarrassed me. Dancing with another man's wife, winning some ridiculous contest, acting like you're in love with her. Another man's wife, I repeated slowly. You mean Brady's wife? Yes. The same Brady who's been giving you variety for the past 3 months. Lydia had the grace to look uncomfortable. That's different. How is it different? Because it just is. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. You're unbelievable. You can have an affair with a married man, but I can't dance with his separated wife? They're not separated. They are now. What do you mean? I mean, Janelle filed for divorce yesterday morning. Apparently she's tired of being married to a man who doesn't appreciate her. It was a lie, but a convincing one. Lydia's face went pale, and I saw her hands tremble slightly. She can't do that. Why not? You said you needed variety. Why can't she need the same thing? Because she's supposed to. Lydia stopped herself. She's supposed to what? Sit quietly while her husband sleeps around? Accept it with a smile? Be grateful for the scraps of attention he throws her way? That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Because that's exactly what you expected from me. Lydia stood up abruptly. This conversation is pointless. You're being vindictive. I'm being honest. For the first time in months, I'm being completely honest. About what? About the fact that I deserve better than this. Better than you. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Lydia stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. The guilt and uncertainty were replaced by anger. Fine, she said. If that's how you feel, maybe we should make this official. Maybe we should. I'll call a lawyer on Monday. You do that. She turned and headed back upstairs, her footsteps sharp and angry on the wooden steps. I heard the bedroom door slam, followed by the sound of drawers being opened and closed. My phone buzzed with a text from Janelle. "Coffee? I have news." "On my way," I replied. 30 minutes later, I was back at Grind, sitting across from Janelle in the same corner booth where we'd first planned our revenge. She looked different today, more relaxed, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "You look happy," I observed. "I am happy. Happier than I've been in years." She leaned forward. "I filed for divorce yesterday." "You did?" "Right after I got home from the gala. I realized that what we did last night wasn't just about revenge. It was about remembering who I used to be before I got lost in Brady's shadow." "How did he take it?" "About as well as you'd expect. Lots of yelling, lots of blame, lots of accusations about you and me." "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect. He's staying at a hotel until we figure out the living arrangements." She smiled. "What about you? How did Lydia handle your performance last night?" "She thinks we were putting on an act." "Were we?" I thought about the question seriously. The dancing, the laughter, the easy conversation, how much of it had been genuine. "Some of it," I admitted. "Maybe most of it." "I was hoping you'd say that." "Why?" "Because I'd like to do it again. The real version this time, not the revenge version." "Janelle, I know it's complicated. I know we both have other things to deal with first. But I also know that last night was the first time in years I felt like myself, and I think you felt the same way." She was right. Dancing with Janelle, talking with her, laughing with her, it had felt natural in a way that nothing with Lydia had felt for months. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we see where this goes. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility." "What about Brady? What about Lydia? What about them? They made their choices. Now we get to make ours." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You know this is going to get messy." "It's already messy. The question is whether we're going to let their mess define our future." "When you put it like that, is that a yes?" "That's a yes." We talked for another hour, making plans that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with possibility. When I finally left the coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in months. But as I drove home, I realized that Lydia and Brady weren't going to go quietly into the night. They'd been exposed, humiliated, and outmaneuvered. People like that didn't just accept defeat. They fought back. Sunday evening brought an unexpected visitor. I was in my kitchen, making a sandwich and mentally preparing for what promised to be a difficult week, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Brady Ellison standing on my front porch, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. "Brady, what can I do for you?" "We need to talk." "Do we?" "Please, Evan, just give me 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I unhooked the chain and let him in. He looked around the living room with obvious disdain, taking in the worn furniture and lived-in comfort that was so different from his sterile townhouse. "Nice place," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Thanks. What do you want, Brady?" He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for probably the first time in years. "I want you to stop." "Stop what?" "Stop whatever game you're playing with my wife." "Your soon-to-be ex-wife, you mean?" Janelle's confused. She's making decisions based on emotion instead of logic. "Maybe she's making decisions based on self-respect." Brady's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about our marriage." "I know you've been sleeping with my wife for 3 months." "That's different." "How is it different?" "Because Lydia and we have something special. Something real." I stared at him for a moment, then started laughing. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of the man was almost admirable. "Something real?" I managed between chuckles. "You mean sneaking around, lying to your spouses, and treating your affair like some kind of romantic adventure?" "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." Brady began pacing around my living room like a caged animal. "Lydia gets me. She understands my ambitions, my drive, my need for excitement. She's not content to just exist." "Like Janelle?" "Janelle's a good person, but she's small. Small dreams, small goals, small life. She wants to stay home and paint pictures and pretend the world doesn't exist." "And that's bad because I need more than that. I need someone who challenges me, who pushes me to be better. Someone like my wife." "Yes." I nodded thoughtfully. "I see. And what does Lydia get out of this arrangement?" "She gets someone who appreciates her intelligence, her ambition, her sophistication, someone who can keep up with her." "Someone like you." "Exactly." So you're perfect for each other. We are. Then why are you here, Brady? If you and Lydia are so perfect together, why do you care what I do with Janelle? He stopped pacing and turned to face me. Because you're ruining everything. Janelle won't listen to reason as long as she thinks she has you as an option. And Lydia? Lydia's having second thoughts because she sees you moving on. She thought you'd fall apart, make it easy for her to leave with a clear conscience. Sorry to disappoint. This isn't a joke, Evan. You're destroying 2 marriages. I'm destroying 2 marriages? I stood up, my patience finally exhausted. Brady, you and my wife destroyed 2 marriages. I'm just dealing with the aftermath. That's exactly what happened. You both decided you needed variety, consequences be damned. Well, congratulations. You got variety. Now you get to live with the results. It doesn't have to be this way. What way would you prefer? Brady took a deep breath, and I saw him switch tactics. The desperate anger was replaced by calculated charm. Look, I know this situation is complicated, but we're all adults here. We can work something out that benefits everyone. I'm listening. Lydia and I will be discreet. No more public displays, no more office gossip. In exchange, you back off from Janelle and let us handle our own marriage issues. And what do I get out of this arrangement? You get to keep your dignity. No messy divorce, no public humiliation, no awkward explanations to friends and family. I pretended to consider his proposal. That's generous of you, Brady, really generous. I'm glad you see it that way. There's just one problem. What's that? I don't want to keep my dignity. I want to keep Janelle. His carefully constructed composure cracked. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Janelle is smart, funny, beautiful, and loyal. She's everything I thought I had in a wife, but apparently didn't. You barely know her. I know her better than you do, and I know she deserves better than a husband who thinks she's small. Evan, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm choosing the woman who chose me over the woman who chose you. Brady's face flushed red. This is insane. You're throwing away your marriage for revenge. No, Brady, I'm throwing away my marriage for love. You should try it sometime. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact moment when he realized his charm offensive had failed. The mask slipped completely, revealing the entitled, selfish man underneath. You think you've won, he said quietly. But this isn't over. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Lydia will come back to me. She always does. Maybe, but Janelle won't come back to you, and that's what really bothers you, isn't it? Janelle is my wife. Janelle is your soon-to-be ex-wife, and if you're smart, you'll let her go with grace instead of making this uglier than it already is. Brady headed for the door, then turned back one more time. You have no idea what you're getting into. Enlighten me. Lydia's not done with you. She doesn't like to lose. Neither do I. After he left, I stood in my living room for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened over the past week. Brady was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Lydia wouldn't go quietly, and neither would he. But for the first time in months, I wasn't dreading the fight. I was looking forward to it. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Janelle's name appeared on the screen. How was your evening? She asked. Interesting. Brady stopped by for a chat. Oh no. What did he want? He wanted me to back off so he could have his cake and eat it too. And what did you tell him? I told him I prefer pie. Janelle laughed, and the sound made everything else fade into the background. You know what this means, don't you? What? It means they're scared. Really scared. They thought they could control the narrative, but we changed the story. We did, didn't we? And we're just getting started. What do you mean? I mean, tomorrow is Monday, the beginning of a new week, a new chapter, a new everything. Are you ready for it? I thought about Lydia upstairs, probably planning her next move. I thought about Brady, driving home to his empty townhouse and his damaged reputation. I thought about all the people who had underestimated me, who had assumed I would just accept whatever scraps they threw my way. I'm ready, I said. Good, because I have some ideas about how we can make this week even more interesting than the last one. Such as? Such as showing up at the company picnic next Saturday as an official couple. Such as me moving out of the apartment and into a place where Brady can't just show up uninvited. Such as us stopping this charade and admitting that what started as revenge has become something real. Janelle? I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I also know that life is short and opportunities like this don't come along very often. She was right. What had started as a plan for revenge had evolved into something neither of us had expected. The question was whether we were brave enough to see where it led. The company picnic, huh? Brady's supposed to organize the whole thing. It's his big chance to rehabilitate his image and show everyone that he's still the golden boy. And you want to crash his party? I want to attend his party with my boyfriend, who happens to be the most genuine, attractive, and interesting man I've ever met. Your boyfriend? If he wants the job. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. He wants the job. Then it's settled. Brady wanted variety? We'll give him variety, the kind he'll never forget. As we said goodnight and hung up, I realized that Brady had been wrong about one thing. This wasn't about destroying marriages or getting revenge or proving a point. This was about choosing happiness over convenience, authenticity over appearances, and love over habit. And for the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be. The variety Lydia had demanded had led to consequences she never anticipated. Brady's generous nature had cost him everything he thought he valued, and their betrayed spouses had discovered something neither of them had expected to find: each other. As I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, I could hear Lydia on the phone in the guest room, her voice low and urgent. Planning her counterattack, no doubt. Let her plan. Let them both plan. I had plans of my own now, and unlike theirs, mine didn't require lies, betrayal, or treating other people like they were disposable. Mine just required courage. And for the first time in months, courage was something I had in abundance. The game was far from over, but the rules had changed completely, and this time, I was playing to win.